My parents really instilled the belief that like, if you can dream it, you can do it. You can have anything you want. I think a lot of people think that they need to have all of that perfect, like the perfect website, the perfect Instagram, the perfect everything, and then I'll launch. But in reality, you don't need that stuff to get started and put yourself out there.
Hello, Lucy, and welcome to Breaking Glass.
Thank you so much. I am so honored to be here.
Yeah, no, I'm so excited. And thank you so much for being a guest on today's episode. I'm really excited for this one because, I mean, you're a powerhouse. If anyone follows you on Instagram, they're automatically inspired by you. You've done so much. For those who aren't aware, you are a corporate girly turned into a community builder and entrepreneur. You started your brand about a year and a half ago called High Vibe Wellness, and it's been absolutely taking over the city, which is so exciting. I love to see that. Every event you host not only has some serious brand partnerships, but it's truly just one that everyone wants to come back to over and over again. And I think that is a big testament of what you put together.
Thank you. What an intro.
You're welcome. You know, I love to gas up my interviewees here. I mean, that's what Breaking Glass is all about. So on IG, we get to see you and who you are right today. But I really want to learn more about who Lissy is, her story, your background. I just always think it's so interesting and fun to learn about the human behind everything, right?
Totally.
So one of my first questions for you is going back into like adolescent years, right? What were some early life experiences that you feel have helped shape you to the person you are today?
Okay, beautiful. So we'll go way back. We'll start early.
Love it.
I think that like one of the most early memories and things that really shaped my mindset, at the end of the day, mindset is everything, especially in entrepreneurship. My parents really instilled the belief that like, if you can dream it, you can do it. You can have anything you want. And even if they couldn't see a direct path towards making that happen, I mean, they gave me everything they could, but it was always like, if you want it, like you can do it. I remember us making vision boards when I was super little, super little.
Cute.
I know. I had one in my childhood bedroom before I was in 6th grade, like very early on. And I've always had a vision board.
And I have a question. What was on your vision board as a child?
Oh my gosh. I wish I
Was
had
it to
a
be
picture.
A pop star?
No.
No? Okay.
I feel like it was a lot of big homes and like a fancy lifestyle. That was always the dream.
You were always a little bougie. I like it.
A little bit. But I think that was like so important. And I remember we watched The Secret when I was really little. I read the Teen Secret book. I feel like manifestation was in my consciousness from such a young age. So I think that was really key. I know a lot of people who are just finding out about it and getting involved in it now. And I think having that idea and that belief system from such a young age has shaped who I am now. And I always have a vision board hanging behind my desk.
Oh my God, that's absolutely beautiful. That foundational years too. So it really is ingrained in who you are as a human. So that's very impressive. And were your parents like entrepreneurs too? Or were they more kind of like corporate but still had an entrepreneur spirit? Like
Definitely entrepreneurial spirited. Okay. My mom was in a private practice doing art therapy and speech pathology. So definitely in creative fields, a lot in servicing others and some entrepreneurial endeavors along the way. So a little bit.
Yeah, but it seems like the embodiment of growth mindset was key for you guys.
Yeah. And I think just knowing that you can make it happen, even if you don't see, they really supported me in all the ways that they could, but I don't come from a trust fund or a lot of money. So it was definitely, if you can dream it, we'll figure it out. There's a way.
I love that. So it seems like they were influential people in your life. Would you say they were your mentors, you feel, growing up and even to today? And if not, who else were mentors in your life?
Yeah, I mean, I think they had definitely a big impact. More recently, Rada, the founder of Daybreaker, major wellness dance community, global community, epic. I have invested in her courses. I spent a weekend at her home in New York with just 17 other community builders. So I've really started to try to invest in people that are steps ahead of where I am and seeing how they built their dream. So I would consider her definitely someone I look up to and someone I can go to now for feedback and a resource for sure.
Yeah, and I love that you're continuing to learn and like foster your growth because I think that's so important, especially as you have your career journey and you're pursuing your passions. But it's just beautiful to even someone who is far in their journey, and I know you still just got started.
Yeah, I'm brand new.
But like you've made such headway that for someone who's just starting out, they're just like, wow, like she's doing amazing. She's still going for it and still trying to grow. And I think that's really inspiring and beautiful.
Thank you. Yeah, it's always a learning process. Yeah.
So you moved to Miami during the pandemic, and I'm sure you are so happy that you made that decision considering where you are today, but a lot of others did the same in terms of moving to Miami. So why did you choose Miami? I think you moved from New York, right?
Yeah. So, I mean, I was in New York for college, and when the pandemic started, I mean, I was living in a studio with one window with my boyfriend, and he was always at work. I was always in school. So we were never like in the apartment together. And we were like, we cannot be stuck.
Thank God.
Yeah. I was like, we cannot be stuck in an apartment together for, I don't know. At the time we thought a few weeks, but then obviously it was months and years. Or whatever.
Yeah.
So we actually booked a flight to Ireland the second we heard about any potential lockdowns. He's from Ireland. His family's there. We're like, okay, we're going to go for a couple weeks. It'll be chill, like nice little vacation, whatever. Obviously, it was not a couple weeks. Yeah. So we kind of got stuck in Ireland.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I know.
How long were you guys there for?
So we were there for several months. Then we were in England for a while with his siblings. And then when borders opened to Spain, we went to Spain because that's where my mom lives and some of his family. So we were in Spain for another 8 months. So it was a year total in Europe. So while we were over there, our lease in New York expired. Obviously, weren't going to renew because I was like, I don't know when we're coming back. Yeah, crazy. I don't want to pay New York City rent. Well, we're not even there. Right. So we had everything moved into storage. And then when we were coming back to the US, why would we go back to New York? I graduated in 2020 during the pandemic. So I finished college completely online. His job went remote. There was nothing, like no reason to really go back. Yeah, I mean, I love New York, but it didn't make sense. And the pandemic was so much worse there. There were still like restrictions from COVID. And it was just, the city was never the same, I don't think. So I always am a big city girl. I wanted to live in a big city. So it was like just a process of elimination. It was LA, Chicago, New York, Austin, Miami. LA felt really far, and that wasn't great with post-pandemic either. Chicago's way too cold for me, and Austin's landlocked. Okay, Miami. I had been here for one day ever in my entire life. Oh, wow. We signed a lease online from Europe and just went.
Wow. Yeah. Is that like the most spontaneous thing you've ever done?
Yeah, probably. One of them, definitely. It was kind of a shot in the dark. I knew nothing about the neighborhoods, nothing about anything, honestly. Okay. So we just signed a lease, and then here we are.
Where did you guys like move into? Like, what neighborhood did you guys move into?
We were on like the edge of Brickell in downtown, right by like Whole Foods. We were at Muse. Yeah. So we went to where like we knew it was a safe bet.
Yeah,
but
the Brickell area.
Exactly. Nice. So now we're here.
Okay. Wow. What a story. I'm sure it was really fun to be overseas for a little bit too. I'm sure it was like a nice home away from home.
Yeah, it definitely was. Like I had a very privileged COVID experience, and I know a lot of people didn't. So I'm very thankful for that. Yeah. In the moment, it was very weird because to be there for 2 weeks. So it was very stressful being, oh, okay, like now we're here.
We're stuck here. Yeah.
We're stuck here. And then graduating college online sucked because I worked so hard to be in New York. And it's weird. I look back and I'm like, oh yeah, I did graduate college. Like that did happen. It was just so weird.
You didn't get the ceremony, the walk or anything. Did you at least do it virtual or?
Yeah, we did it virtual. And like I ordered a cap on Amazon and like threw it in the living room, and I was like, okay, that's it. It was just weird.
Yeah, it's quite a difference. And like, I guess when you're graduating too, it's like, what do you do after that during lockdown?
Right.
You know,
it was like, just, okay, now what? It was just such a weird time. So.
Okay, interesting. So how would you describe Miami compared to New York now that you've lived both realities for a little bit? And like, how was that adjustment coming to Miami, knowing that it was the pandemic, but Miami, there wasn't really a pandemic here at the same time?
Totally. Yeah. Okay. So comparing New York and Miami, I think I already mentioned like the big cities in America, you kind of think they're like all comparable, but New York is 8 million people and there's only 500,000 in inner Miami. So it's very different experience living somewhere that's much smaller in terms of population. I think there's some history and culture and magic to New York, the Met and these iconic landmarks and Broadway and all these things. Miami feels very much still in development to me, and there's construction everywhere, and the city's still growing a lot. So it's very different in that way. I think overall I live much more balanced, healthy lifestyle here. New York has this vortex of energy that can really exhaust you. I feel like I suffered a lot of stress and anxiety and unnecessary pressure on myself that I didn't really notice when I was living there. Now looking back, I'm like, wow, I was really unwell. So I'm really happy that I'm here in a place where I can be outside more. I feel much more healthy and wellness focused, and it just feels like an overall better quality of life, I would say.
You would say it would be like a more from a mind, body, and soul perspective, like not just like the mindset, but also like being outdoors and all of that as well.
Totally. Yeah. And I think New York has a beautiful hustle culture, but it's not always the healthiest. It's good in doses. I went back. I lived in New York for a month this past summer, I like working remotely, like not a vacation, not going out a lot. And I came back so exhausted. I was like, wow, it just something about the energy there. It just really can take it out of you if you're not careful. And I mean, I was still doing my practices, my yoga and all the things. And I came back and I was like, I'm so tired. So I love New York. It's like a love-hate. Now I think an ideal world, I'd live there a couple months of the year, but I think that's enough. I wouldn't want to go back to full-time.
Would you say that when you were in New York was wellness like a big pillar in your life, or do you feel like that something was more something you adapted when you moved to Miami?
I would say it was always here and there. Like I would always do like a drop-in yoga class here and there, but it was not nearly to the extent that I have my practices now. And I think I really started to take it consistently, seriously during the pandemic when I had so much time and the world stopped and you realized, wow, I have a lot that I'm not dealing with. And you had a moment to kind of reflect on like where you actually are mentally and physically. So I would say it started seriously during the pandemic, but I mean, always a little bit here and there.
If you don't know, Miami was actually rated like the #1 city in terms of health, being active, really compared to the United States, like #1. So I think it's always interesting how that can really influence people who just come over here from different cities and like they change and evolve and in a beautiful way, you know?
Yeah, so beautiful. I mean, and the weather, like you can be outside and go on a walk. Like in New York, it was just in the winter. I wanted to stay inside all the time. It was like the motivation to want to walk to yoga in the snow. No,
yeah, like seasonal depression seems like to be a real thing.
So real.
It's such like a weird reality because I grew up in Miami.
Okay.
And I was born and raised here, you know, the general story that you have here, Cuban American, basically I'm first generation American. And while there is a hustle culture for sure, still to a degree, I think that it's just much more still enjoying life. So it's just feel very privileged to experience that. So it's interesting to see how people evolve from that. But going into high vibe wellness, so you're building this community or built and continuing to build, better said. So what inspired you to start building this community space in Miami?
Yeah. So kind of back to your previous question about the adjustment period in Miami. When I first got here, it was really hard. It was the first adult move where I didn't enter a college, a school, an in-person job.
Something that would network you.
Right. Like it gives you that built-in community. You're like, okay, I have people to become friends with. But I moved here not knowing a single person. I mean, I had my boyfriend with me, but that was it. And I was working a remote job where none of my coworkers lived in Miami. I'd never met any of them. So it was like, okay, this is all on me now to find friends. And it was super challenging. I just felt like overwhelmed. I felt burnt out. I was going to so many events and so many things, and it just like never clicked for me. Felt like it was a lot around drinking and the drinking culture. And if you're not trying to be in that scene as much, where do you go to meet friends? Yeah. And it was just really hard. I was super anxious, super lonely, and I wanted to build kind of what I wish I had when I first moved here, a place where Miami locals could find aligned friendships and community in an alcohol-free space, doing something health-focused but still really fun and really upbeat and social. Yeah.
Oh, I love that. And so would you say it was more of an aha moment? You reached that wall and you were like, okay, I really want to find that community. Do you feel like it was just one day to the next, or do you feel like it was something seated in you and you just like were really craving it?
I think so. The process of trying to make friends here was like for a long period of time. Like the first year was really putting myself out there. I was going on a lot of first friend dates from Instagram DMs. I got stood up so many times.
Really?
So many. Oh my gosh. But I have met some of my best friends that way. So it's hit or miss. I was getting so burnt out putting myself out there, and like I know the struggle. So it was definitely a personal challenge that I was facing. Yeah. In terms of starting the community, I always called to being an entrepreneur. I was always called to do something that I was really passionate about. I'm a creative person. That always excited me, but I had no idea that this is what it would become and what it would look like. When I quit my job, I was working in influencer marketing at a well-known e-com brand. Okay. And, you know, I got a lot of skills from that job about partnerships and events and things like that. But I just knew intuitively, like I was ready for more. I craved more. I wanted to feel more excited, more fulfilled, more passionate about my work. And so when I quit, I mean, I didn't really have a plan for High Vibe. I just knew that like, no.
Okay, so High Vibe was not even like to the degree
wasn't
what
a
it
thing.
is.
Didn't have a name, wasn't a community.
Really? So you
no
just
plan.
Like, I'm going to go all in.
Yeah. And I had no idea what that was going to look like. I was just knew I could not keep giving 40 plus hours of my week away to something I didn't really deeply care about. I was like, I couldn't do it. I was so exhausted by it. So I was just like, I'm going to quit and something will come to me. And here, that's what happened.
Nice. Like really trusting the universe there.
Really trusting the universe.
Yes.
Maybe slightly irresponsible, but it all worked out.
Yeah, but I feel like you have to take those risks. You know?
Totally.
Like if you don't go all in, then like, you know, what really is.
Yeah.
Is
it's
really,
good to challenge yourself.
So you're also a yogi. So I know you started your yoga journey, I think 1.5 years ago too. It's been like a full circle moment, it seems, for that in that last 1.5 years. So how do you feel like your yoga journey has shaped yourself and how it's evolved, specifically High Vibe?
Yeah, so I was practicing yoga a lot starting in like 2020 till now. And then even before that, like I said, when I was in college, I'd go here and there. Like I was always practicing a little bit. And then I got super into it during the pandemic, every day doing yoga. And then I got certified in April of last year in 2023. I graduated my teacher training. So a year ago, I had started teacher training and I did it at Mimi Yoga in Wynwood. It was like the most amazing experience, the most amazing community. It was the best decision I could have made.
Yeah, I hear raving reviews about
if you want to go get your teacher training.
Shameless plug.
Shameless plug. It's so good. But from there, like when I'd started, I was like, do I want to teach? Maybe. I really wanted to do it just for self-development, to have a deeper understanding of my own practice and the history of yoga and the anatomy and really learn. And it also bonus that I got such incredible friends from doing the training. But after everyone says you want to teach, I feel like a lot of people go in and they say, I just want to do it for myself. And then you graduate and you're like, actually, I really want to teach. And so I started teaching pretty much right away from after graduation. And for me, it's been a really nice way to connect with the community in a different way. When I started High Vibe, I was only hiring other teachers because I wasn't certified. And so I still hire other teachers. I think it's beautiful to give people a diverse experience of leaders, of different voices, different styles, different types of classes. I don't want it to always be me. But when I do get to teach, it's really nice because you connect deeper with people and you can really support them in a whole different way. So it's definitely helped me like grow personally and grow the brand as well at the same time.
That's beautiful. I'm sure like the energy is just electric at those events. And I'm dying to go to
yes,
one.
you have to come to the next one.
I know I have to. So your approach to events is alcohol free, right? And we touched a little bit on that, but this seems like to be a really important piece for your brand identity. So what inspired you to move in this direction?
So personally, I'm alcohol free. It'll be 2 years in May. So it'll obviously aligns with my personal values. It was a decision, one, for my health. I think we can all agree it's not the healthiest.
No, it's horrible, especially for your mental health too.
Yes, mental, physical. I think I'm generally a pretty sensitive person. I'm prone to migraines and skin inflammation, stress and anxiety, and it doesn't help any of those things. So also when I'm off my sleep schedule, and it definitely impacts your sleep, I'm not myself. So from a health perspective, I wanted to kind of give it up. And then also I felt like I was doing a lot of the one drink, social pressure, kind of supposed to have one in my hand kind of thing, but not really wanting to explain why I don't want it because people love to pressure you, you know, the whole thing. So when I stopped drinking, it was just, I'm going to go without it for a little bit and like, let's see how I feel. And I never looked back. 2 years later, I don't miss it at all. I think it has really incredible benefits mentally, physically. So personally, that's part of the journey and the reason why High Vibe is alcohol free. Aside from that, I think that when you add alcohol into an event that is about connection and networking, if you're coming alone as a single woman to an event, it can be a little uncomfortable if there's too much alcohol present. I think removing the alcohol makes a safer environment for connection. It kind of avoid any potential issues. I think it also helps you connect deeper with yourself and the wellness practices. It helps you connect deeper and more authentically with others, showing up without the influence of alcohol. Where in Miami, there's not a shortage of alcohol-fueled events and happy hours and clubs and all the things. So it's just nice to have an option that's not that and provide something different. A lot of people who come to the events are not alcohol-free, not sober, but they're down to just have a good time sometimes without drinking. High Vibe to be a place that shows you can have an amazing time. You can be yourself. You can have fun without drinking. And we expose people to a lot of the non-alcoholic spirit brands and the canned mocktails. So it's a nice place for people to kind of explore and see what's out there as well. And just finally, I think, you know, we're in the wellness and health industry. So it's generally just a healthier experience overall with alcohol.
And I love that because at least personally for me, alcohol really does send me like a downward spiral whenever I drink, especially when I'm actively in the stage of drunkenness, I guess you could say, right? But the next day, it feels like you have a whole day wasted, you know?
100%.
The older you get, the worse the hangover.
Yes.
The hangovers get.
It got to a point where I would have 1 or 2 drinks and I was wasting days in bed. And I can't afford to do that anymore. Yeah. It's not fun. It's not worth it. Most of the time, you're not even getting the benefit. I wasn't even drinking enough to really feel it. It was just like, oh my God, I'm so hungover. And it didn't used to be like that in college. It was different. I could drink, I could hang.
You can wake up at 9 a.m. and do it again.
Literally. But it's just not the same anymore.
It's really not. It's really not. It's tough. So it seems like health and wellness is a big part of your life, but why do you feel so passionate about this and why it kind of led you to start a community space?
Totally. So when I moved to New York, I was 18 on my own, first time I'm in the big city. And I think obviously when you live at home, like you have such a routine and your parents are providing for you. And
it's a bit sheltered too.
Yeah, you know, it's just different.
Yeah.
And so when I got to New York, I was on my own. I had, you know, obviously financial support with tuition and thankfully so many scholarships, but I was financially responsible for my life, my rent, my social life, my eating and whatever.
Oh, wow. That's a lot at 18.
Yeah. It was a big responsibility. And I think I was a broke college kid. I was working in bars and restaurants, even mostly as a server, but even as a bartender, bottle service at a nightclub.
Really?
Totally different brand, you guys.
Wow.
So
Yeah.
off-brand.
Like I would not expect that, but
I know. I mean, had to make the money, you know?
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
I was chasing the dream of New York and I wanted to go to Parsons, which
and you were young.
Yeah. If you're not familiar with Parsons, it's, you know, a 70 grand plus a year to go. And it was in the middle of Manhattan. There was a lot that had to happen for me to be able to go there. And so I was working in the bars and restaurants and it's great money, but it was, you know, no routine of any kind with my sleep. I was staying up till 3 a.m. I was obsessively drinking. I think that the freedom of being in college in New York and going to the clubs was very glamorized and it was fun, to be honest, at times, but I think it got a bit out of hand. And I think being in the industry of the restaurant scene, like you end up drinking a lot more just because of that with your coworkers and everything. So I think that I was like making a lot of unhealthy habits, not eating well, not sleeping well, too much alcohol.
You just felt like overall, like still you can navigate through life and you can wake up the next day and be fine is what you mean.
Exactly. And I physically was like, you know, fine. And I don't think I realized what kind of mental impact those healthy habits have and how they really are something for your mental health, not just your physical health.
Yeah.
So over time, that was taking a massive toll and just building slowly more and more anxiety. And at the time, I guess I wasn't on social media maybe as much then. And the conversation on social media about anxiety and things, like I just wasn't familiar with that. I didn't know that that's what I was experiencing. I didn't identify with that.
What were your experiences that kind of made you think that you were having these anxieties?
So it really took hitting absolute rock bottom, ending in the hospital, having an anxiety-induced seizure for me to realize that this was an issue.
Okay.
Which is very extreme. And I think that it was terrifying. It was shocking. I was also in a toxic relationship at the time, which absolutely does not help. Yeah. So I think it was very sad to have to get to that point to realize like, whoa, I need to like reevaluate how I'm taking care of myself mentally and physically. So it wasn't like, boom, now I'm healthy, but it was a wake-up call for sure. I did end up getting on medication because I was so scared of it happening again. And I'm not proud of having been on that medication and having to take like an SSRI, but also not medical advice. Do what's best for you, you know, but I think over time I realized like, I don't want to be numbing out. I don't want to be on this forever. And in order to get to a point where I feel like ready to come off of it, I need to really start taking care of myself. So over time and definitely during the pandemic, like I mentioned, really getting into the yoga, the mental health practices, journaling, meditation, breath work was massive, but yoga mostly, I would say, and really showing up for myself. But I've just experienced firsthand, like you can get off the medication. You can manage your anxiety. It doesn't mean I don't have anxiety now. I think everyone has it here and there, and a little bit is probably even healthy. You know, it's normal to be stressed a little bit at times, but you don't have to live in that severe state of anxiety. And so many people are struggling with that. And I just know that showing up on your mat makes such a big difference. And if I can help people find their practice, if I can help people decide to come to a high vibe event instead of going to a bottomless brunch, it's a win for me, you know? Wellness can be fun and it can be accessible. And I know that it doesn't take like being super extreme. I think showing up consistently to your mat and doing yoga is a beautiful place to start. If you're getting into wellness, it can feel overwhelming. There's so many tech products. You track this, take this many ice baths and this much time in the sauna and do this crazy biohacking routine and 50 supplements. And you're like, actually, I'm not going to do anything because now I'm so overwhelmed.
You feel like paralyzed with options in a way.
Yes, 100%. I'm so in the wellness space and sometimes I feel that way. I'm like, oh my gosh, not another thing I'm supposed to be doing. Like, what?
It's like tracking another thing.
I know. And then like another app and like, you know, I think it can be overwhelming and these tools are amazing. And I think that they all have a place. And as you get more and more invested, it'll be easy to add in and habit stack and explore new wellness things, which is something I try to help with at High Vibe, is exposing you to new practices and in a fun social environment. So it seems not not so scary. But I know firsthand how much the yoga can really make a difference and how much these practices matter. So that's why I care so much.
Yeah, and thank you for sharing that, by the way.
Yes, of
and
course.
I think that, especially coming from the whole hustle culture that you came from New York, I'm sure that put a lot of pressure on like your anxiety, right? And like I can resonate with that, right? To a degree, of course, where, like I grew up with Hispanic parents, and sometimes when you grow up with Hispanic background, like there is a little bit of that hustle culture of like, get it, keep going, doesn't matter. It's like survival mode in a way, I like to call it, or I think it's really what it's called when you are in that survival mode of just pursuing something because like you feel like desperate, because that's, you feel like it's a last resort.
Right.
But I think it's like converting out of that survival mode and like having a lifestyle that's much more balanced, right? And it is in the small things that you do. It's what you think, what you consume in terms of social media, the music, going to a yoga class, right?
What you eat, all of it,
but it's like, how can you make small steps?
Yeah,
just to
totally
be better, a little bit better every day.
A little bit, and just showing up for yourself like a little bit. Like it doesn't have to be like a 90-minute hot power class. It can be a 10-minute stretch in the beginning at home. It can be so simple, but like that little mindful practice, the daily movement, like it's so important. And I think when you haven't done it, maybe you think like, sure, like,
it works. 10 minutes gonna do a meditation.
Does something. I swear it does something.
Yeah,
it
no,
really
seriously.
does.
No, seriously, it does. Like ever since like I made that change too, like a couple years ago, because I mean, of course, when you grow up in that mindset, like you kind of adapt parent mindsets, right?
Right.
And sometimes it could be bad, right? Not their fault. It's just the way that it was, right? And like, oh my God, it's just so transformative. You can show up so much more for everyone else in your life because you were able to give yourself those 10 minutes.
Oh, that's so beautifully said. Showing up for yourself first, and then you can give.
Yeah, and I feel like that's kind of like the big part of like life and the whole journey of why we're here. We're just here to all support each other through this journey that we call life.
Yes, totally.
Going into, staying on the topic of high vibe, partnerships is a really big part of high vibe. I think it's really impressive, the brands that you bring in, right? So this has been a hot topic, it seems, for you, and a lot of people are always intrigued, like, how is she getting these partnerships? Was this something that you had in mind in the evolution of your brand, of like having partnerships as part of each event? And did you always have the specific partners that you have? Were they always in mind for you when you were going to launch?
Yeah, I think partnerships was an inevitable for High Vibe. My background is in partnerships. I work a lot with brands on a personal level on TikTok. So I had a good understanding of kind of how to make a partnership beneficial to the brand and the other side of things. So I knew I'd always work with partners. And from the first event, we always had partnerships involved. I think strategic partnerships can be a really great way to elevate your own brand by who you're associating your brand with, elevating the experience by partnering with really strong brands in the industry that you're in. And as a consumer, it's just really fun to get exposed to new brands when you come to an event, whether that's a partner that's co-hosting the event or it's in the goodie bags and you're getting new products.
We all love our goodies. So.
Who doesn't love a freebie? Like, let's be for real. Everyone loves a good gift. So my love language is gifts. So I'm like, all about it.
Love it.
So it was always going to be part of the brand. And I think it makes it more fun all around.
So you've been working on High Vibe for some time. And as you navigate new territory, especially as an entrepreneur and through this entrepreneur lens, and being in a new city, it's natural to always just hit some walls, some barriers, and kind of like the imposter syndrome that can happen,
Yeah, I know. All about that.
So how have you experienced that? And it seems like you have. And how have you navigated through kind of like those mind walls, I guess you can say?
Yeah, I mean, entrepreneurship, it's funny because I'm building a community-based business, but on the back end, it can be quite lonely. I'm a team of one. And so it's just me. And a lot of times I'm like facing my own, just spiraling in these decisions and not sure what to do next. And I bounce ideas off my boyfriend, but there's no one invested in the company or like part of the company that I am making these decisions with. So it can be a lot of back and forth in your own mind, I think. Also trying to limit my scrolling on social media because it can be a very toxic place. I think the entrepreneurship is very glamorized on social media. It's constant comparison. I made this in this amount of time and I'm doing this. And
like,
it's a lot.
It's exhausting to see at the same time. That's why, like, I think seeing the real side of entrepreneurship, which can be beautiful and amazing and all these things, but there's the reality that it's you against you, and if you don't get things done, and nothing will get done.
So true. Yeah, I'm the only one making the next event happen. There's no one else, and I'm lucky. I get to work with a lot of the brands, like we talked about, a lot of other instructors. So there is some collaborative portions of planning these events, but there's no one on my team. team and my volunteers, shout out, because I couldn't do it without them, but it's just me. So it's a lot of you against you, a lot of trial and error, learning as I go. And it's part of the journey, you know, trying to love that part of the journey, but it can be challenging. And there's a lot of times where I'm like, one thing will fall through or something crazy will happen. I'm just like, oh, what am I doing? Do I want to give up? And I'm like, no, keep going.
And I think that's the most important part of keep going, because especially when you're like very much in your head. I know for me, I'm a big, and starting Breaking Glass, you know, I'm in the beginning stages of it. Right now when we're recording it, I haven't even launched it, right? But I think as I'm starting to build this brand, I get so stuck in my head. Yeah, am I good enough? Or is this going to work out? Or does anybody care to listen? So I think like fighting the monsters in your head, for me so far, seems like the hardest part about entrepreneurship. Because like the physical, you can kind of break through, but it's kind of like, how do you break through that mindset?
Yeah, you know? It's so much about the mindset and the confidence and the willingness to put yourself out there too. You know, this is going to be published. It's going to be on social media. Same with myself. I'm always putting myself out there in the community, and some people aren't going to like it. And some people are going to give you harsh feedback, and it's learning to create those boundaries energetically to protect yourself while also letting your community know that they're heard, that you respect their feedback, that you take it seriously. How do you invite them back after? There's always going to be someone commenting something negative, and it's just learning how to be okay with that and move forward and know that 99.9% of people are cheering you on and loving every moment of what you're doing. So it's a journey.
So have you received backlash from like High Vibe? You feel like people have responded negatively to some of the events you've hosted? And if you don't feel comfortable with that question, I can cut it out, but I'm just curious.
I have gotten a handful of emails after an event where something that was, you know, it could be anything, or there's always going to be one person that just wants to tear you down. They're not in that mind space to be able to support you and know that you're trying and you're learning, and I'm a team of one and I'm on my own, just trying to do my best. There's always somebody who's going to say something. Overall, it's been overwhelmingly positive. I have an amazing supportive network personally and in the community. People have been so kind, but I have had a few that aren't so kind.
A few haters out there.
It's part of the personal development journey of being an entrepreneur, and you can't make everyone happy. You have to be authentic to yourself and just do the best you can.
Always heard that, you know, the people who are doing more than you are never going to be criticizing you. They're just going to be proud that you got started and you're going to keep going. In starting Breaking Glass, I've spoken to a lot of entrepreneurs and female entrepreneurs, founders, and it's amazing to hear like even just your insight and your mindset, right? And willing to share that. And I feel like the people who are going above and beyond and stepping into that power of their life, they're so open and willing to like help someone else, you know?
Totally.
And I think that's so beautiful.
And I think that's how it should be. I think there's a lot of competitiveness in wellness, but also like with women in business, and it doesn't need to exist. It really doesn't. There's room for all of us. Even in the same industry, we can all do this. There's so much potential for us all to be incredible and to support each other and like to share contacts and insights and cheer each other on. There doesn't have to be any competitiveness. There's really room for everyone.
And I think that each of us show up so uniquely and different that, you know, you may be putting on an event, someone could be putting on also another alcohol-free event, but it could be done in such a different way because that's how they show up, you know? And I think that's where we have to like, remember that it's not becoming that girl or becoming whatever version that social media kind of like pushes us to become, and it's just stepping into your uniqueness, you know?
Yes, and just being like authentically you, because people are attracted to the brand, but they're also coming because they've seen my personal content or they've connected with me or my yoga classes. And I think like as long as you're being true to yourself, everyone can build a community and there's room for everyone, and so much overlap between the communities too. I mean, I only host once, twice, maybe 4 times a month some at times, but there's so many days, there's so much to go around, there's so much abundance. And I think that's what it comes back to, the manifestation and having that mindset that there's room for us all, there's enough to go around. It's an abundant place to be.
Yeah, I agree. And I love that.
Yes.
So what has been your most memorable moment for High Vibe so far?
Ooh, that's a good question. There's definitely been a few. I think one is working with Plunge. They're one of the partners that you asked about partnerships before, and they were a partner that I knew I'd really wanted to work with. And I met their team during Art Basel a year ago in 2022. And I stayed in touch, and I like, you know, kind of built that relationship over time and just made sure that it was going to be a beneficial thing for both parties. That's huge with partnerships, and making sure, you know, that they're attracted to what I'm doing and see the value in it. And we ended up working together on an event like almost almost a full year after I met the team. They were part of the 1-year celebration. And it was just like such a moment of my business and celebrating how far we'd come, and then having a partner that I really wanted to work with and believe in what they're doing, be part of that celebration. It was so special. Yeah. And since then we've worked together a bunch, which is really exciting.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. Like a full circle moment.
I know.
Which is
so full
fun,
circle. Yeah.
So fun. And I think that's an important point to tap on, because you spent a year trying to build that relationship and you built it where you can have that event with them. And I feel like some of us get a little impatient in the beginning where it's like, we need to have it done now, you know? So like it's important to note that, you know, you really took your time in that process to make sure that you can build a solid foundation with them to be able to put an event that made sense for both of you. So
that's so well said. Absolutely. Yeah. With the partnerships, it's all about relationships. And at the end of the day, you're working with a person and you both have to vibe and want to work together.
It's a big one.
It's not like
human.
Me and a brand. Like, yes, they represent a brand, but they can move on to a new brand at any time. It's with a person. So you want to make sure that you also vibe to create like a really special experience and want to work together. And then it's a win-win all around.
Yeah, I like that, because I feel like sometimes, like especially me, like I can get a little too corporate-y. I'm like, I don't know if that's even a word.
I think there's a balance.
You gotta find that balance.
You gotta be professional.
You gotta walk that fine line, but at the same time, like, you know, develop a relationship with them where it just doesn't feel like it's work in a way, you know?
Right, exactly. And some of my best partners that I've worked with now, like when they're in town, we'll have a lunch, we'll hang out, we'll go to an event or a class together.
So cute. It's like, I love that.
Yeah, you know, I think it's a fine line. Like you are a professional relationship, but at the same time, you're two people who are invested in health and wellness or whatever industry you're in, and you want to make sure you enjoy it. It has to be fun. It's so much better when it's fun.
That's kind of like the point of going into entrepreneurship, right? Is be like the narrator of your life and to have fun, you know?
Yeah.
So
otherwise, what's it all for?
Exactly. All these like wars in your mind, right? For what? You know, at that point,
you gotta be enjoying it.
You don't even enjoy it. Okay, so any teasers for what's to come for High Vibe?
Ooh, okay, so I mean, if you know High Vibe, we love to keep it a secret till like the last second. Yeah. But this year, there's going to be a lot of new venues, a lot of new brands, a lot of new concepts and partnerships, and just continuing to really take feedback from the community. I want to give you guys what you want the most. So every time I get feedback, DMs, suggestions, I'm all ears. So continuing to respond to that community feedback and just growing from a place of authenticity and passion. And I'm so excited about it. And there's just a lot of fun pop-up experiences coming.
Ooh, nice. And a lot of newness. I love that.
Yes. And then also I'm going to be co-launching something brand new in the health and wellness scene in Miami. Okay. So part of something I really wanted to do with High Vibe was create more consistent programming. I think it's nice for people to be able to come together more often to really build relationships and be able to reach more people. I mean, if you're not available on the one date I'm hosting an event a month, then you can't come, and you know there's not always enough space for everyone. So I wanted to do something where we could reach more people, be more affordable and more consistent. So I'm going to be co-launching something called Coffee and Chill. Ooh, and you might be familiar if you're heavily into health and wellness. You might have seen it's a viral community in LA, and we're going to be, myself and Eric Brown are co-launching the first ever chapter, and it's going to be here in Miami.
Oh my God, I love that.
I'm super excited.
Okay.
So this is going to be, you know, a lot of the High Vibe community. It's going to be involved, but it's also going to reach so many other communities because it's just more, it's a broader concept for more people. So, you know, we're going to be drinking coffee, of course. It's going to be bi-weekly in the morning on a weekend, and we're going to be taking ice baths. And it's going to be a really like social, fun wellness thing. It's not going to be serious. It's not going to be overly like curated. It's just going to be relaxed. It's going to be good vibes. It's going to be networking, a great place to like come hang, get your ice bath in, kick off the weekend, and like get to meet really amazing people. And I think we're going to reach so many different communities and bring them together into one space, which is very exciting. Yes. You guys aren't ready. It's going to be amazing.
I'm excited. I'm excited. Sign me up. I'm there, girl.
Yes.
That is exciting. And one thing that I did want to tap on, and it's not technically one of the questions, but it seems like you have a really engaged community, right? And of course that comes with the landscape that you're in and all of this, right? But how do you feel like you were able to build that community on social specifically?
Yeah, so when I started posting on TikTok consistently was when I first moved to Miami, and I was being very, very real and honest. If you guys have been here from the beginning on my TikTok, you know I didn't like Miami, and I wasn't shy to share about that. In the beginning, because I was just sharing like how hard it was to make friends and like the things that I didn't love about living here and like how hard that transition was. And I think a lot of people related to that content. A lot of people were like, yeah, it's really hard. Or even some, like a lot of locals were telling me, yeah, I've kind of outgrown my current friend group if I've lived here my whole life. It was just a place of honesty on TikTok. And I think that's like where my first little bit of following came from.
Okay.
And people were engaging with that. And then I started sharing recommendations for things to do in Miami as I was here and exploring and going to different restaurants and events. I started sharing about that. And so people started to come to me for what to do in Miami on TikTok. And then naturally that progressed into, you know, let me take you along to my events and build something where I'm bringing you all together in one spot. So I think a lot of the content on TikTok was where the engagement came from. And I still post a lot on TikTok and like have a really cool community there. So that's kind of where the initial community started growing. And then now, you know, through the events and through High Vibe, and I'm at all of my events leading them. It's very hands-on. I'm interacting with every person that comes. So they get to meet me. And then, you know, it just
has evolved and grown from there. Yeah, right, no, exactly. I love that. And I think that's so important. One, being real. I mean, that's all about what Breaking It Glass is about, is just showing the real side of like entrepreneurship and mindset and all these things.
And like, it's hard to be always so honest. Like I don't share it all online for sure. And it's
there needs
something
to
I'm
be
always
that
striving to share more and be more transparent, because you don't want to share the downsides. You want to share your highlights, but social media really is a highlight reel. And I think when you do start sharing even just a little bit of the more like real side of things, people gravitate towards that because they're like, oh, I'm not alone. Yeah,
no, I agree with that. Even like when I did my first post on Instagram, I literally screamed when I hit post. I was like, and it's not even like being vulnerable, but it's just like in a way for me it was
out there.
vulnerable.
Yeah, it is,
so
totally.
it's nerve-wracking, especially when you talk about the deep stuff. So
I always tell myself, if I'm uncomfortable, I'm growing. That's been like my mantra. I get super, like when I taught my first yoga class, I was super nervous. When I taught at my first event, I was like shaking, nervous. And people are always like, you seem so confident. I'm like, I am, but I get nervous. So I'm always tell myself like, this nerves, these uncomfortable feelings, like it's growth, it's good. Lean in.
And it also means that you care, you know?
Yeah,
so totally. I think like having the butterflies is also important, because if you stop having them,
you're
not passionate about it anymore, you know? So I think they're also kind of good. But so going more into like health and wellness, right? Which is a big pillar in your life and in your business, but more in the personal side, in your personal brand, especially now. You're talking a lot about cycle syncing. And disclaimer here, we are not just doctors, you know, this is not recommendation advice or anything of that nature. This is just purely sharing our stories and your story and like what you've learned so far. So for those who don't know anything at all about cycle syncing, right? What is it, and what was the catalyst that got you started in this journey?
For sure. So in very simple terms, cycle syncing is making small lifestyle adjustments based on what phase you are in your cycle. So that could be what you're eating, what kinds of foods you're eating, your workout routines, your social activities, and even some people take it as far as adjusting what kind of work they're doing if you have that freedom during what phase of your cycle you're in.
Oh, okay.
So when you're, you know, in your follicular or ovulatory phase, you're working a lot more on projects like this. You are doing your social things, your meetings, you're asking for a raise, things like that. Versus in your luteal phase, you're going to be focused more on those deeper work projects and kind of tying things up, closing out things, and working more independently and more internally. So that's just one example. But in terms of, most people start with like the food and the workout routines and understanding how you can make adjustments to ultimately balance your hormones, increase your energy levels, your productivity, and overall just your quality of life. I feel like it's given me that like spark back. It's given me an ability to be really in touch with my body and understand like why I'm feeling the way that I'm feeling during certain times of the month, and not beating myself up for that. Instead, just supporting myself when I need to.
Yeah, no, and I bet that's like so powerful too, you know, to be able to like know your body to that degree, you know, you feel like much more confident, I'm sure, as you navigate everything else in life.
Yeah, absolutely. So it can be, I think people hear about it and I think they feel overwhelmed because it's like, oh my gosh, I'm just already trying to eat healthy. Now I got to do it differently every week of the month. So I'd say think 80-20, do what you can, start small and build up to doing it more full time. Go easy on yourself. I'm not perfect with it. I still eat out. Some meals aren't cycle synced. It's all good. I think do as much as you can.
So how long does it take to see the benefits of cycle syncing? And have you seen any difference in how you show up since making this a part of your lifestyle? And it seems seems like you have.
Definitely. Yeah. I'd say it's about consistency. And I think you do need to do it for a while. I mean, everyone's different. Your body will respond differently. I would say several months of commitment before you're seeing probably super profound changes. I've been doing this for 2 years.
Oh, wow. So
Yeah.
this has been a part of your practice for a while. It's just now is when you're talking about it.
I didn't share about it in the beginning because I'm still learning a lot, but I was learning like from scratch, not knowing anything. I also wanted to see if it was going to really work for me. I think it works for everybody, but you know, I was skeptical. I was like, okay, like we'll see. So yeah, I've been doing this for a while and I've seen really big benefits in my energy levels. I also used to have super painful periods and really painful symptoms, cramps. Like I would be in bed the first day, like all day, like with an ice pack on my head, a heating pad on my stomach, and like
you're like out for the day.
Out. It was just not the vibe. So I started it because I was motivated by that and I didn't want to feel like, oh my gosh, if my period comes today, like I can't work, I can't do what I've committed to or anything like that. So it does help reduce those symptoms over time. It's not like perfect, but I've noticed I would never spend a day in bed with my period now. No way. That's been a really big benefit. And then also learning to adjust based on where I'm at. You know, I feel like I would never have thought to like plan my events around what phase I'm in my cycle or my social activities. And now I do because I really feel the difference.
You can show up like at your 100% versus like at like 80, you know?
100%. Yeah. I mean, it's not to say like, oh, you can't hang out with your friends when you're in your period, but it's like deciding, okay, I'm going to plan something that's going to take a lot of my energy and I'm going to put that at this part of my month. And maybe I'll like hang out with my friends and have a movie night in during the luteal phase instead, you know, things like that.
Right. That is so interesting. I definitely have to learn more about that. I'm a PCOS girly, so.
Oh, you could benefit, a lot from it.
But the thing is that my cycles are, I mean, I don't even think I would consider them cycles at this point, but I think that I'm still on the journey and I've healed a lot of my PCOS and the symptoms and all of that. But I think like tapping into like how I can cycle sync, you know, can really help. So
yeah, and I think it helps a lot of people with the transition if they're trying to get off hormonal birth control and things like that. It can be helpful there too.
Yeah, I'm like an anti-birth control girl, but
yeah, me too.
It's a story for another time. So I always love to wrap up my interviews with some words of advice that you would like to offer to the audience or the community. So based on your experience thus far, what advice would you give to someone wanting to start their own community?
Okay, so I would say initially this might not sound super insightful, but just start. And what I mean by that is not getting hung up on the logistical tech type of things. For me, as someone who's more creative, the thought of having a perfect tech stack was very overwhelming and still is. Like the perfect email marketing, the perfect social media posts and curated feed, and how do I get SMSs to remind everyone the day before the event, and how do I set up an LLC and do set up the LLC and get insurance. But you know, I think it was like you don't have to have all of that perfect. I launched my website like a week ago. We've been in business for a year and 4 months. I didn't need a website. I had Eventbrite. Like, you know, you don't, I think a lot of people think that they need to have all of that perfect, like the perfect website, the perfect Instagram, the perfect everything, and then I'll launch. But in reality, you don't need that stuff to get started and put yourself out there. Obviously, it depends on the business, but especially with community-based businesses, you can start by inviting your friends. You can start with Eventbrite. You can start with your personal channels and then build. So when I had the opportunity to run my first event, I was working with a yoga teacher that I really love and respect. And she said, I have the Aloe Design District store wanting to host an event in 2 weeks. Do you want to do it? I know you've been wanting to like kind of build something. When Aloe says you want to host a store, an event in our store, you say yes.
You say yes.
So yeah, at that point I had no logo, no business, no insurance,
No way.
no name. High Vibe was not a thing yet. It literally did not exist. And by committing to that, I came up with a name and a logo and an Instagram and I figured it out. And I remember like walking around to CVS on hold with insurance companies trying to find someone who would take me because it's a little bit unique. And like you have the time pressure, you've made a commitment to people and brands that you respect and you want to put your best foot forward and you'll figure it out. I promise. I got it all done. And like, I think if I didn't have that, it would have taken me months and months and months of thinking about it. And you can always change it later. I changed the whole logo later. Like it didn't matter. It's whatever.
I watch a lot of Shark Tank episodes, right? And they always say that, you know, you won't really know what your brand evolves to until you just start doing it.
Right.
And I think 100%. That's kind of like a testament of that. Exactly. You know, it's like you just kind of went for it and then it evolves and then it becomes what it becomes, you know, and that's what it's supposed supposed to be.
Exactly.
So.
And you can adapt and you'll learn. Like I'm learning every day. Every time I do an event, I learn something new, how to make it better, easier, how to take different types of feedback and incorporate them into the next thing we're doing. So you don't have to have it all figured out. And I think a lot of people get hung up on like the it needs to look perfect and then I'll launch it. And instead just take action, start doing it, host a free event, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And just put yourself out there and you'll figure it out. It will work out.
I love that. That's so beautiful. So last question. Is there a particular life lesson you've learned that you would like to pass on to others? / what would you tell your younger self?
I would say to really follow your intuition. I feel like I've learned that lesson many times over, but following that gut instinct and like really, I think my practices, the yoga, the meditation, the breath work all help train that intuitive response to be stronger. And then not only having the response and like voice in your head telling you it's right, but listening to it, because it's very easy to kind of feel like, oh, it's fine. Like I'm gonna do this. Cause I think like talking yourself out of it. And I think just listening to that really strongly and going for what your intuition says is so important. So yeah.
Oh my God, that was beautiful. That was great. And a great way to wrap us up. So thank you so much again for joining us today. I mean, I think this was a beautiful interview. We got a lot of insight in terms of high vibe, but also you from like a mindset perspective and how important and how integral it's been a part of your entire life, really. So thank you again. And yeah, stay tuned for the next episode.
Thank you. It was so fun.